You've been working hard, practicing deliberately, building robust skills, but here's the problem with effort: it's exhausting. You can't sustain maximum effort forever. Willpower runs out, motivation fades, discipline crumbles. But what if you didn't need to rely on effort? What if the behaviors that build skill could become automatic? What if practice could shift from something you force yourself to do into something you just do, without thinking, without deciding, without the constant internal battle? This is the power of automation and habit. When a behavior becomes a habit, it no longer consumes willpower. It runs on autopilot. And suddenly, what used to drain you becomes effortless. The same amount of practice, but at a fraction of the cognitive cost. This is how you convert effort into infrastructure. This is how skills become not just something you can do, but something you are. Let's build that automation. Reward prediction builds habit loops. Your brain learns habits through a simple mechanism: the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward. When a specific cue reliably predicts a reward, your brain starts to automate the routine that connects them. Here's the critical insight. It's not the reward itself that drives the habit. It's the prediction of the reward. Once your brain learns that a certain cue leads to a certain reward, it starts craving that reward when it sees the cue. And that craving drives the behavior automatically. This is why habits feel effortless. You're not deciding to do them. Your brain is anticipating the reward and executing the routine before you even consciously think about it. So if you want to build a practice habit, you need to establish a clear reward. And it needs to be immediate, not the distant reward of mastery 6 months from now. An immediate reward that happens every single session. Maybe it's the satisfaction of crossing something off a list. Maybe it's a small treat. Maybe it's the good feeling of progress. Whatever it is, it needs to be consistent and immediate. Because once your brain learns to predict that reward after practice, it will start pulling you toward practice automatically. Reward prediction builds habit loops, and habit loops are how you turn effort into autopilot. Environmental cues automate behavior. Your environment is full of cues, visual triggers, contextual signals, and your brain uses these cues to automate behavior without conscious decision-making. You walk into the kitchen, you open the fridge. You sit on the couch, you reach for the remote. You don't decide to do these things. The environment cues the behavior automatically. You can use this. If you want to practice consistently, you need to create environmental cues that trigger the practice behavior. A specific location, a specific time, a specific object you see or touch. Put your guitar in the middle of the room where you'll see it. Lay out your practice materials the night before. Create a dedicated space that means this is where I practice. Your brain will start to associate that space, that time, those objects with the practice routine. And when you encounter those cues, the behavior will activate automatically. The inverse is also true. If you practice in random locations at random times with no consistent cues, your brain never builds the association. You have to rely on willpower every single time. It never becomes automatic. So engineer your environment. Create consistent cues. Make them impossible to miss. Let your surroundings do the work of triggering behavior so your willpower doesn't have to. Environmental cues automate behavior. Use them strategically, and practice becomes something your environment pulls out of you, not something you have to push yourself to do. Reduced friction multiplies repetition. Every bit of friction between you and starting reduces the likelihood you'll do the thing. Every obstacle, every step, every moment of setup is a place where you might give up. If you have to dig your practice materials out of a closet, set up equipment, find the right space, you've created friction. And friction kills consistency. Some days you'll overcome it. Other days you won't. The behavior never becomes automatic because the path to it isn't smooth. But if you reduce friction to nearly zero, If the barrier between intention and action is tiny, repetition multiplies. You practice more often because it's easier to start than not to start. This is why proximity matters. Keep your practice materials visible and accessible. This is why setup matters. Arrange everything so you can start in seconds, not minutes. This is why simplification matters. Remove unnecessary steps. The goal is to make starting so easy that the resistance is negligible. You don't have to pump yourself up. You don't have to overcome inertia. You just begin. And when starting is frictionless, you start more often. You get more repetitions. You build more skill, not because you're more disciplined, but because you've removed the obstacles that used to stop you. Reduced friction multiplies repetition. Obsess over removing barriers. Make it stupidly easy to start. Because the easier it is to begin, the more you'll actually do it. Pre-commitment stabilizes discipline circuits. In the moment when it's time to practice, you have to decide. And every decision is a chance to say no, to skip it, to do it later. Your present moment self is weak. It wants comfort, it wants ease. But your future planning self, the version of you that thinks about long-term goals, is stronger. That version can make commitments that bind your future self. That version can remove decisions before they have to be made. This is pre-commitment, deciding in advance, creating systems that make the behavior automatic so your in-the-moment self doesn't have to choose. Schedule your practice sessions like appointments. Tell someone you'll practice with them. Pay for a class in advance. Set up automatic reminders. Create accountability structures. Make public commitments. All of these are pre-commitment strategies. They remove the decision from the moment of action. You don't ask yourself, should I practice today? The answer is already decided. You scheduled it. You committed. Now you just execute. This stabilizes discipline circuits. Discipline isn't about being strong in every moment. It's about being smart once in advance and creating structures that make the right choice automatic. So don't rely on in-the-moment willpower. Pre-commit. Decide once, then build systems that remove future decisions. Because pre-commitment stabilizes discipline circuits, and stable circuits produce consistent action. Progress visibility sustains dopamine tone. Dopamine drives motivation. When you see progress, when you see evidence that your effort is working, dopamine gets released. And that dopamine makes you want to keep going. But progress in skill development is often invisible. You're getting better, but slowly. Incrementally. Day to day, you can't see the difference. And without visible progress, dopamine drops, motivation fades, you lose momentum. This is why tracking is so powerful. When you make progress visible, when you create concrete evidence of improvement, you keep dopamine flowing. You give your brain the signal it needs to stay motivated. Track your practice time, track your reps, track your scores, graph your improvement, take videos of yourself and compare them to older videos. Keep a journal of breakthroughs. Whatever metric makes sense for your skill, measure it and make it visible. The act of seeing the numbers go up, seeing the graph trend upward, seeing evidence that you're improving, that's dopamine fuel. It doesn't matter if the progress is small. What matters is that it's visible. Progress visibility sustains dopamine tone, and sustained dopamine keeps you engaged, motivated, hungry for more. You're not just practicing blindly, hopping, you're improving. You can see it, and seeing it makes you want to keep going. Timeboxing sharpens urgency chemistry. When you have unlimited time to do something, there's no urgency. You can start whenever, work at whatever pace, take breaks whenever. And without urgency, your brain operates at low intensity. Focus is weak, effort is diluted. But when you timebox, when you set a specific container of time and commit to working intensely within it, you create urgency. Your brain knows it has limited time. The deadline, even an artificial one, activates arousal systems. Norepinephrine rises, focus sharpens, you work with intensity. This is why the Pomodoro technique works. 25 minutes of focused work, then a break. The constraint creates urgency. You're not just working until you feel like stopping. You're racing the clock, and that race sharpens your attention. Timeboxing also prevents endless, unfocused sessions where you're sort of working but not really. When time is limited, you can't afford to waste it. You go hard for the duration, then rest. This creates concentrated practice, which is far more effective than diffuse, extended sessions. So don't practice for a while or until you're done. Timebox it. Set a timer. Decide in advance, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever makes sense. Then work with full intensity until the timer goes off. Timeboxing sharpens urgency chemistry. It transforms lazy, wandering practice into focused, intense practice. And intensity is what drives rapid improvement. Predictable routines preserve bandwidth. Decision-making consumes cognitive resources. Every time you have to decide when to practice, where to practice, what to practice, you're burning mental energy. And by the time you actually start, you're already partially depleted. But when you have a predictable routine, when practice happens at the same time, in the same place, with the same structure, you eliminate those decisions. You don't wake up and figure out your day. You already know. 7 a.m. practice space, 30 minutes, specific exercises. It's automatic. This preserves bandwidth. You're not spending willpower on logistics. You're spending it on the practice itself. And because you have more bandwidth available, the quality of your practice improves. This is why elite performers are so ritualistic. They do the same warm-up, the same routine, the same sequence. It's not superstition. It's cognitive efficiency. They're preserving mental energy for performance by eliminating unnecessary decisions. So build predictable routines. Same time, same place, same sequence. Let it become so automatic that you don't have to think about it. Your brain just knows this is what happens now. Predictable routines preserve bandwidth. And when your bandwidth is preserved, you have more to invest in the work that actually matters. Ultra-short breaks protect neurotransmitters. You can't sustain maximum focus indefinitely. Your neurotransmitters, the chemicals that power attention and learning, deplete with use. If you push too long without rest, performance degrades. You stop learning efficiently. You make more mistakes. You're grinding but not progressing. But here's the good news. Neurotransmitters recover quickly. You don't need a long break, just a very short one. 60 seconds, 90 seconds, close your eyes, look away. Let your mind wander, and your neurochemistry resets. These ultra-short breaks, strategically placed, protect your neurotransmitter levels. They prevent depletion. They keep you operating at high intensity throughout the session instead of starting strong and fatting. Research on attention shows that even brief, passive rest periods improve sustained focus. People who take microbreaks maintain performance. People who power through without breaks show declining performance over time. So during intense practice, build in ultra-short breaks. Every 10 minutes, pause for 60 seconds. Don't scroll your phone, don't read something, just rest. Let your brain idle, then go again. Ultra-short breaks protect neurotransmitters. They're not wasted time. They're recovery. And recovery is what allows you to maintain intensity over longer durations. Decision fatigue degrades learning. Every decision you make throughout the day depletes a shared pool of willpower. By the time you sit down to practice in the evening, after a full day of choices, that pool is shallow. You're operating on fumes. And learning, which requires intense focus and self-regulation, suffers. This is decision fatigue, the cumulative cost of choice. And it's why practicing at the same time every day matters, and why that time ideally should be early. When you practice first thing in the morning, before you've made 1,000 small decisions, your willpower reserves are full. You have maximum capacity for focus, discipline, effort. The quality of your practice is higher. But beyond timing, You can also reduce decision fatigue by simplifying your life. Wear the same thing, eat the same breakfast, automate routines. Every decision you eliminate elsewhere is willpower you can redirect to learning. Elite performers understand this instinctively. They strip away unnecessary decisions. They automate everything that doesn't matter so they can invest fully in what does. Decision fatigue degrades learning. Protect yourself from it by practicing early, by building routines, by eliminating trivial choices. Save your willpower for the work. Recovery rituals cue consolidation. Learning happens in two phases, acquisition and consolidation. You acquire during practice. You consolidate during rest. And you can optimize consolidation by creating recovery rituals that signal to your brain, it's time to process what just happened. A recovery ritual is something you do immediately after practice. Something consistent. Something that cues your nervous system to shift from active engagement to integration. Maybe it's a specific breathing pattern. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's journaling about what you learned. Maybe it's a particular type of music. Whatever it is, it becomes the bridge between effort and rest. And here's what happens. Over time, your brain learns that this ritual means consolidation time. It starts processing the practice session more efficiently. The ritual becomes a signal that accelerates the neural cleanup and integration that happens during recovery. You're not just stopping practice randomly. You're bookending it. You started with a cue that triggered the practice routine. You're ending with a ritual that triggers the consolidation routine. You're creating structure around the entire learning cycle. Recovery rituals cue consolidation. They help your brain know when to work and when to integrate. And that clarity, that structure, optimizes both phases of learning. You started this part relying on effort, forcing yourself, using willpower. But now you see the path to automation, reward prediction, environmental cues, reduced friction, pre-commitment, progress visibility, time boxing, predictable routines, ultra-short breaks, protection from decision fatigue, recovery rituals. These aren't just tips. These are the mechanisms that convert effortful behavior into automatic behavior. They're how you build infrastructure, how you create systems that produce consistent practice without constant internal struggle. Because the goal isn't to be disciplined forever. The goal is to build habits so strong that discipline becomes irrelevant. To create an environment and a routine so well-engineered that practice happens automatically, effortlessly, inevitably. That's when learning accelerates. Not when you're fighting yourself every day, but when you've built systems that make the right behaviors automatic. When effort has been converted into infrastructure. When the practice that builds skill has become simply who you are and what you do. That's mastery of the meta skill, mastery of learning itself, and now you have the blueprint.